What's going on YouTube? B-sod here. Today I'm going to be reviewing this Ryzen 7 5700X 3D as well as show you what the CPU is capable of against the 5900X in gaming. The original price for this processor was $249 on Newegg, but as the time for new AMD chips to come out, the price has been dropped down drastically to $199, and sometimes you can even find it open box in Newegg for $190. This CPU I like to call the 5800X 3D's little brother for having the same 8 cores and 16 threads. However, it is slightly downclocked to 3 GHz base clock and a boost clock of 4 GHz as opposed to the 5800X 3D's 3.4 base and 4.5 boost. It also has the same 96 MB L3 cache and its TDPs are the same at 105 watts, so it's not a very power hungry processor. The specs for the system I tested these games are as follows. The Ryzen 9 5900X and the 5700X 3D as stated before, 32 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM, clocked at 36 MHz and a cache latency of 14, and for the GPU, an Asus ROG Strix 4090. The first game I tested was Shadow of the Tomb Raider at 1080p and 1440p ultra settings with the DLSS option off. The tests I did were with ray trace shadows off and then on for both resolutions. And as you can see in the graph, the 5700X 3D shows a slight advantage over the 5900X, especially in the 1% lows. The most notable difference from the X3D processor comes at 1080p with ray tracing off, which embarrasses the 5900X with a lead of 50 FPS on the average and 14 FPS on the 1% lows. The following game tested was Farcry 6, a game that likes to really take advantage of the v-chache. And as you can see, once again, the difference is clear. The 5700X 3D takes the lead by 10 to 15 FPS on averages and 1% lows. You can see the difference again at 1080p with ray tracing off, almost like Tomb Raider, but considering the game takes advantage of AMD processors, at some instances, you can barely tell the difference. For Red Dead Redemption 2 at ultra settings, we get almost the same FPS with both CPUs, again with a nice advantage at 1080p over the 5900X. This game has two APIs, DX12 and Vulkan, but for this test I decided to go with DX12 API. Unfortunately, I ran into an issue with the 5700X 3D at the pause menu that when you switch between the options, the CPU would bottleneck until it eventually crashed. The 5900X CPU did not do that in this test. It did just the usual, just crash a couple times until it eventually stopped. I don't think this is the CPU's fault, as this game sometimes likes to crash. And finally, the last game for this test is Assassin's Creed Mirage, and surprisingly the 5700X 3D did slightly worse than the 5900X in the 1% lows, and slightly better on the average FPS. I would think that this being a Ubisoft game, it would take advantage of AMD's v-chache, but that wasn't the case. Having played the game with both CPUs, it's the same scenario where the games feel exactly the same with the exception of like 1 out of the 4 games I tested. In conclusion, would I recommend this to someone who just games and wants cheaper option than the 5800X 3D? Yes, but if you're the type to use their computer for other things along with gaming, then unfortunately it's not something I would recommend. Like the difference is barely noticeable to sacrifice the productivity value of the 5900X. So that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it, give a like or hit subscribe. Do not miss the upcoming reviews. Until then, peace out.